How's it going, gamers? Today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to build a PC. Specifically, we're going to be building an Intel PC today, but basically all the steps are going to be the exact same besides how you install the CPU cooler. There's just some slight differences there. I probably will make an updated version of this video for AMD specific computers, but really the only thing that is different is how you install the processor. If you guys need a video going over how to buy PC parts and how to find ones that work together, make sure you guys get in this playlist and find my video on my channel where I teach you how to do that. Or if you guys are looking for a video on what to do after you build your computer and how to boot it up, I'll also have a video in this playlist or just on my channel if you guys look me up. So without any further ado, let's get into the tutorial. So whenever you guys are building a PC, make sure you guys have a big spot like this. If you guys have an anti-static mat, that would be awesome, but most of you guys aren't gonna have that. In the meantime, if you guys could buy one of these on Amazon, that'll help out a bunch. This is an electrostatic guard. So all you have to do is put this on your wrist, and if you have something metal nearby or even your PC case, it'll basically ground you. So you'll have this while you build. So if you guys have static that's like built up on your hands, you're not gonna like fry your whole motherboard as soon as you touch it. It'll get rid of all that and ground yourself. I have built a lot of computers and I have never had a problem, so I'm not gonna wear this and I'm gonna be a very bad example for you guys. I find them very annoying, but if you guys are building a PC with your money, then I would suggest picking one of these up for a couple of dollars because it may save you a lot of money. But in the meantime, we ballin'. AdSense is up, boys. Not even monetized, but AdSense is up. So I'm gonna be using this like mouse pad. It's a giant mouse pad. We're just gonna use it to have something like soft so we don't scratch the case. The first step, we're gonna open up the case, and ideally you have everything spread out beautifully like me because you could just see everything in its beauty. If you guys have a tempered glass panel, make sure you guys are really careful because you don't want to shatter this because it kind of makes your case useless if you shatter the panel. So be careful with it and don't play around with it. So after you get that side off, just take this other side panel, that's usually metal. They just slide off. You have two screws on the back here. Slide it off. That gives you access to the back. You're gonna want this because that's where you slide the power supply in, and you guys will see later. So now that you've taken the side panels off of your case, we don't care about this. So we're gonna put this over here. Not in the trash, but it basically is trash. Not really. First, we're gonna look at the motherboard. My processor is already installed for some reason, so let's fix that. So after you guys get the side panels off of your PC, the first step that I would do would be taking your motherboard out. Ideally, I would put it on top of the actual like bag that it comes in because those bags are really cool. They're static free, so place your motherboard on top of the box and the static free bag, and then do everything I'm doing. I don't have them right now because they're in the trash, but if you guys are doing this, you'd have them. It would help you out a lot and reduce the chances of you frying your motherboard right from the start. So the very first step, we're gonna take our motherboard and we are going to lift this. We're gonna open this up. This is basically an Intel tutorial. If you guys have AMD, everything's gonna be the exact same besides this part. It's a little different. For Intel, you'll notice that there's a little triangle right here. If you look at the motherboard, there's another triangle right here. This is because you have to line up all the pins with this so it actually like works and you don't break everything. All right, so now you're gonna take your processor and you're gonna gently drop it into place. This is literally the most scary part of building any PC, but if you guys line up the corners, you have nothing to worry about. It's in place. We can see that these two notches here are exactly where they should be. So now all we're gonna do is take this panel, we're gonna lift it down, take this bar, and we're gonna push it. And you're gonna feel a lot of force. It's gonna be terrifying, but it's what's supposed to happen. Whatever you're doing, it's all right. As long as you don't hear any cracking, you guys are good. So I like to do as much as I can to the motherboard before I throw it in the case, just because you get weird shadows when you have like a case that's up here. So I put the CPU in. Some people would put RAM in already, but I'm gonna wait on that because I don't know if my CPU cooler will work with that. So really after this, I'm kind of done with the motherboard for now. I'm gonna put this aside and throw the power supply in the case. Ooh, I hate that. All right, so if you have a case like this, we need to put the power supply in the back. Sometimes you could put it in either side, but for whatever reason, we have to slide it in right here. So whenever you put your power supply in, you'll notice that there are 4 screw holes right here. This screw hole is not in the corner, so that's how you know it is properly positioned. They should all line up. So what I like to do is I just slide it in from here and just keep it in there like that. I'm not gonna screw it in yet, just in case I need to route wires somewhere. You guys will see what I mean by that in a second. So now that I've slid my power supply in here, we're gonna rotate this PC down so we can screw in the motherboard. The reason you like to put your power supply in first is because if, say you're coming in from this side, or even your power supply is up here, you do not wanna drop that on your motherboard. So we like to put the heavy stuff in first so we don't drop something and ruin that. All right, so I'm just gonna grab all these cables. Be careful since it's not screwed in. Just throw it down on its side. Don't drop it that hard. All right, so we're gonna take our motherboard, which is very sharp apparently. Be careful. All these pins on the back are like very small. They're basically like needles, so don't cut yourself. A very important part of throwing this down is these standoffs. So these things right here are what the motherboard screws into. And sometimes what you'll see is you won't have all the standoffs you need installed. So this tool right here is really cool because this is how you tighten down standoffs onto your actual case. You can see that there's a little Phillips thing right there. So what you guys do, if you guys need to install a standoff, you take it, you drop it on the ground real fast. So you take your standoff, you throw it in here, and you take a Phillips, put it wherever you need to, and then screw it with the Phillips. And then whenever you're done, you tighten it down, you lift it up, you have a standoff. We have all of ours installed already, but one way that you guys can know if you need to install more standoffs is if you guys don't have a standoff in these locations. There are a bunch of different sizes for a motherboard. This is a bigger one. Basically anywhere where you see these little silver contacts, you need to put standoffs. So one quick way to know if you need more standoffs is to just set your board down in the general area and see if you could see them poking through those little silver areas. So if you guys look here, you can see the little gold shining through. We know that there's a standoff there, here, there. If you guys don't install these correctly, it won't ground the motherboard the way it should be. Sometimes motherboards won't even like work correctly if you don't do this right. It's also really important because when you're installing RAM and like these cables, your board's gonna flex a ton. So you want it to be sturdy and actually have support so you don't like snap your motherboard. All right, so before we actually throw that in, we're gonna install the IO shield. It comes with your motherboard. Just line it up with your motherboard so you make sure you have it in the right orientation. Now you're gonna take this and you're gonna push it right through here. This part's kind of weird, but basically you just push it into place and it takes a little. So I like to start on the corners, work my way up, and you should hear a bunch of snapping. Now my IO shield's in place and I'll take the motherboard. We're gonna lift it down into here. And we kind of wanna have it at an angle like this so we could get the ports to come through where they need to. So as you can see, these ports came through exactly where they should be. And if we go on the top, we are close to our standoffs. So your PC case is gonna come with screws. These are the screws that we will be using for our motherboard. For my specific example, we have a little ridge around the entire way. And if you guys look at the threads, they're very small. So just make sure you guys are careful with this step. Make sure you guys read your instructions and make sure you have the right screws and don't force anything. You don't wanna cross thread, just make sure it goes in just like a normal screw. So I have all the standoffs lined up. We're just gonna screw this down. We have several screws to throw in, so we'll go ahead and fast forward that. So sometimes these aren't going to be lined up, so you'll have to push your motherboard into place. And after you get a few screws in, it gets a lot better. It's important not to over tighten these. It's pretty easy to do, but you don't have to go crazy. As long as it's not loose, you should be good. Okay, so I just screwed in the entire motherboard. I have all the screws in wherever you saw those like silver like little linings around the hole. Sometimes before you screw in your motherboard, you have to kind of think about where it's going to be at. If your motherboard is going to be all the way against the top, sometimes it's important to route some wires like these through first, but chances are you guys aren't gonna have to worry about that. All right, so after you guys have your power supply in down here and your motherboard all screwed in, usually what I like to do first is connect the headers to your actual motherboard. So what I mean by headers is all these switches right here are connected to your motherboard via these little headers down here and some other small cables. So we have to connect that down here. So on a standard PC case, these are the cables you have to worry about. They're gonna come straight from up here. These are these cables right here. So we have the USB 3.0. This cable right here says HD audio. This is for these two ports right here, your aux and mic. This little bunch right here are your main front panel headers. These control things like your power button, your reset button, and the little lights by your power button. These actually tell you that your PC is running or that your hard drive is being used. Now, some cases will have another thing like this, but instead of saying HD audio, it says USB. Those are for normal USB ports, but since this case only has USB 3.0, this is all that we'll need to use. But you guys don't have to worry, even though the HD audio and the USB connector are very similar, they're actually laid out different, so you can't plug them into each other. So people actually did some pretty cool stuff here. You can't really mess it up too bad. So first we're gonna go with the USB 3 and we're gonna route this to wherever it is on the motherboard. So right here, USB 3 looks like this, and usually it says USB 3 on it. You guys could look at your motherboard specifications. They usually say what everything is on your manual, but I know that's a USB 3.0. So we're gonna route this through this little hole right here. There's a little knob here, and you just line that knob up right there. This is the little knob that I was talking about. We're gonna line it up with that knob. So we're just gonna push it in. Just don't do it at a slant. You don't wanna bend the pin. So that looks pretty good to me. Now we're gonna start on the front panel headers. All right, so these are the front panel headers. We can tell because it says F panel 1. If you guys look closely, you're able to see that they have little names over where each connector goes. This is literally the hardest part about building a PC, and I'll have a picture right here that shows exactly what you need to do because I know that's really small. So just like before, we're gonna take these wires from the back here, and we, on this case, have a hole right here that works perfectly. So we have all our front panel connectors right here. Now we're gonna go connect them. So on these front panel headers, you'll see this little triangle. Make sure you guys line that up consistently. I put that on the plus. It doesn't really matter because either way, it's just gonna be switching what wire does what, but just keep it consistent and you guys shouldn't have any problems. So one quick way to know that you're keeping it consistent is all the letters should be facing down. So we're gonna start with the bottom row. We're gonna put the reset in first. It's gonna be a little weird because we're gonna have an extra pen hanging out on the end over there, but that is normal. Now we're gonna take the power. That goes right above the reset, and just do this gently. You don't want to bend any pins. Now we're going to go for the hard drive LED. It's just going to go in the bottom left. After that, we have these weird ones that are separated. We have the power LED, which like tells you that your computer's on. What do you know? And just slide those on the last two pins on the top left. These are definitely the hardest because they're separated, and it's just like, they're tiny pins. It's hard. So I'm going to make sure that they're all pushed down. Everything actually looks pretty good. Now we're gonna move on to the other headers. And real quick, just to make this look better, we're gonna pull this out on the back so we don't have all that extra cable. So now it's just like a little mess, not a big mess. So now we're gonna mess with the audio. All you're gonna do is take this, and there's usually some holes down here. This is why we didn't put in our power supply yet, because we wanna make sure we can move it around a little. We're gonna route this wire through here. Usually on your motherboard, it says HD audio. It matches what's set on here. So if you look at this real fast, you guys could see that it's missing a hole right there. And if you guys look at that bottom left corner, it's actually missing a pin there. That's how you know what goes where. So we're gonna line it up identically to how that is, and we're just gonna push this on there. So we just pushed it on there, and I'm gonna pull that cable a little out of the way so we don't have to look at it. So if you guys have the other header that looks like this but says USB, you plug them into these. They say USB. Notice how they're different than the USB 3s that were up here. They just say USB. They don't say 3.0. They don't have the little notch. They're completely different, and they're pinned just for the standard USB. Like I said, my PC doesn't have the standard USBs on the top, so I don't have to worry about that. Lucky me. All right, so now that we have all the front panel headers hooked up, we're gonna go with hooking up the CPU cooler. This part's not fun. Sometimes it's easier, but for whatever reason, the cooler that I'm using, from experience I know, is a pain in the backside. So let's have some fun. It is important to note that Intel and AMD are very different in how CPU coolers work. There's different sockets, so some CPU coolers won't work with others. That's why it's important to know that your CPU cooler works with your processor. It's easy to find out. All you have to do is look up what socket is your processor. After you figure that out, make sure the socket fits your actual cooler. So I'm not gonna show you exactly how this cooler works because every single cooler comes with instructions on how to set it up. They're kind of all different. But first, we're just gonna set this here. I'm gonna push down. We're gonna hear a bunch of nice clicking sounds. For this specific cooler, you have these little clear knobs there that go through the motherboard. Then these push those clear knobs apart. So it makes them basically wider on the backside so you can't pull it out. So if you guys do that right, if you guys go to lift this, it's not gonna come up. It should be stable on all corners. Make sure it is, because if one corner is not on all the way, it's gonna be a big problem. So most likely your CPU cooler is gonna come with a little bit of thermal paste, might even be pre-installed, but if it doesn't, you're gonna need some of this. I'll have a link down to some below, just thermal grease or thermal paste, whatever you wanna call it. There's a lot of controversy over how much thermal paste to use. And from my experience, a little green pea size in the very center of your processor is all you need. That's what I was taught in college. It's what I was taught for like my certifications for building PCs. That's all you need to do. So we're gonna take our thermal paste and in the very center, we're just gonna squeeze a good amount out, almost similar to how much you should use for toothpaste, but we all use too much toothpaste, let's be honest. Okay, so that's probably a little more than I actually needed, but we're gonna just keep it like that. Some people would spread it around the processor, but it's actually not a good idea to do because you can create air pockets and that's not as good for transferring the heat to the cooler. So this is our cooler. We have some wires here. We're just gonna move out the way. Make sure we like the way it's positioned. This is the way we need it to be. All right, so there's little knobs here and there. We're just gonna line it up so it fits. So I have it hooked on that side, I know, because I can't lift it up over there. Now I'm gonna push this down. This part's always kind of weird for this CPU cooler because it requires a lot of manhandling and it just does not feel good for expensive PC equipment. But once it's on very well. So your CPU cooler is gonna have a little connector here. This one you don't really have to worry about. Most CPU coolers won't have this. This is strictly just for lighting, so I'm not even gonna hook that up. This is what's important though. This is how your fan gets power to spin. If you look on your motherboard, you will have a bunch of headers. They'll probably be in a different place than mine, but I have ones that say CPU fan. I'm gonna hook mine up to the one that says CPU fan 2 just because I need the other one later. As long as it's one of the CPU fans, you should be good. So that's connected. I'm gonna take this wire and just push it through the back and pretend it never happened. So as you guys can see here, there's a potential problem. All right, so this is why I waited now to do the RAM. Some people would do this earlier, but I wanted to do this now because I wasn't sure if it would fit with the CPU cooler. It's very big and it's kind of awkward. So that's the only downside about the CPU cooler, but we're gonna see if we could get this in the correct slot. So your motherboard is gonna tell you what slots to use. If you guys don't have the manual, then get online and look up your motherboard. Just simply search what slots I should put my RAM in for your specific motherboard and you'll find some. For my motherboard, I'm supposed to put them in the two blue ones if I'm doing dual channel. If I'm doing single channel, I start with the first one. All right, so luckily for us, this still fits here. I have some bigger sticks of RAM that would not fit under this, but we're good. So one thing I forgot to mention, these are slotted so they only go in one way. There's a little knob right there and it lines up right here. Make sure you guys are using DDR3 RAM with DDR3 motherboards and DDR4 RAM with DDR4 motherboards. This part's always kind of scary for new builders because you have to push down pretty hard on your RAM sticks, but you want to make sure that you hear 2 clicks, and we know that these are seated. So now that you guys have your RAM hooked up, you're gonna look for a cable from your power supply that says CPU. And usually CPU cables, either they come in a 1 4-pin like this, or an 8-pin. Now you're just gonna take this cable and we're gonna route it to where it says CPU on the motherboard. Usually it's gonna be up here, so I'm gonna route it through there. Now we're gonna flip it back and smash all these wires. Now we're gonna take these and there's a little tab up here. There's gonna be a tab on the plug that we're putting it in right there as well. So you should hear them click. This is for the CPU power. All right, so CPU power is connected. Now we're gonna do the motherboard power. This is the biggest connector. So this is a 24-pin. Sometimes they'll just be a 20-pin like this, but if you're building a modern PC, it should look something like this. So you wanna make sure that they're hooked up the way they should be. Sometimes they're a little weird. There's these hooks that like basically connect it so it stays together. It's always a pain. So now we're gonna just route this through the best spot to get it as close as possible. All right, so now that we got it through, just gonna make sure that those are in place. Just like the CPU, there's a little clip and a clip there. So just make sure you guys push it down until you hear or feel the little click. There you go. And just push whatever cable we don't need down. So at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and screw in the power supply just so I know everything's like in place. These screws usually look something like this. You usually get these screws with your actual power supply. While we're right here, there's a little switch here. This is how you know it's on, if the 1 is up. And if you guys wanna like turn it off, if there's like a storm coming, make sure you guys turn it off with the power button up here. And then after it's turned off, turn that off. That makes sure that power can't get into it. Obviously, connect these to a surge protector, please, but that's just one way to protect it a little bit more. All right, so now we're gonna hook up our hard drives. I'm only gonna show you one because it's the same process for every single one, and I have a bunch, but first, we're gonna start with our big hard drive. So in my case, we have these little banks here. So you just push these tabs, you take it out, and you drop your hard drive in, make sure that the ports are gonna be going out this way on the back of your case. So with this, I don't even have to screw these in. Some cases are different, but it's already like stuck in there really well. So I'm just gonna slide it back in. And you're gonna hear the click. So for hard drives, you have 2 cables to connect to it. You have the power and then the data cable. So for a standard hard drive, this is a cable that you'll use for power. It has a little divot there. That's how you guys know you're hooking it up right. If you look at the actual hard drive, there's also a little divot there. So you guys just match it up and you should be able to plug it straight in. There's no clicking you really hear, it just plugs in and you should be good, don't force it. Next is gonna be your SATA cable. It looks like this. You also have to connect this to your hard drive. There's a little notch right there. It's the same deal, line it up to the hard drive. So I'm gonna go in like this. So now for this end, we have to connect this to the motherboard. So I'm gonna route this through this hole. So you're gonna be looking for your SATA cables. There's a bunch of them on this motherboard. Sometimes you'll have less. It's also notched here. So I'm just gonna plug it into the top one here because the way this is bent, I can't put it on the bottom. So I actually just switched this so I could actually plug this in because it had a weird bend in the cable, but just gonna plug it in down there. And now your hard drive's hooked up. Just repeat this if you guys have more hard drives. All right, so now is the fun part. I'm gonna put the graphics card in here. Basically what you wanna do, always use the first slot up here. You do usually have 2 for this size motherboard. That's if you have 2 graphics cards. So this slot up here is the one you're supposed to put it in first if you're only using 1 card. So please do so. It's not a good idea to put it down here because first of all, you're getting less cooling and the lanes on the motherboard are designed to have it on this one. So in order to put your graphics card in, you're gonna have to take some of these out. So for this one, I know I need to take the top 2 out. So for the graphics card, these little lips are gonna go behind the motherboard. And you're gonna make sure that you hear that click. As soon as you hear the click, you wanna throw a screw in over here so you keep it from bouncing. So I'm gonna take my screw, I'm gonna lift this into place, try and thread it in there. So in most cases that would help. For whatever reason, the hole right there seems to be stripped out so it's not very tight. So we'll see how that goes. So sometimes you won't have to do anything else to hook up your graphics card, but for most graphics cards, you have external power. So coming out of your power supply, you should have a cable that says PCIe. That is what you hook up to your graphics card. So we're gonna take these and take them through one of these holes so that we can get it to the graphics card without making it look too bad. All right, so I routed it through here because I think that's what's gonna look the best. Right here, you're gonna have a clip. For this specific one, we only need 6 pins. Sometimes there'll be a 4, but I don't need those right now, so we're just gonna plug that in. And we're gonna pull the excess out because we don't wanna be seeing all that. So the good news is you guys are almost done. I know this has taken a very long time so far, but you guys are getting there. All the hard stuff is done. Now we just have some of the last minute stuff to do. So sometimes if you guys don't have a motherboard that has Wi-Fi built in, you'll need a little card like this, or better yet, a little USB that you just plug in the back or front that does the exact same thing as this, but this has little antennas that you screw in. It picks up Wi-Fi a little bit better, so I'm gonna throw this in. So I actually need to take out another one of these to get this in here. So for this specific case, you just break these out of there. This is called an expansion card, and this is the slot this goes into. You can see because it's notched for it. Alrighty, so after you get that in there, Just throw a screw in to help keep that in place. So at this point, we're almost done. All I need to do is really to hook up these fan headers. If you guys have an RGB fan, you guys are gonna need to find a tutorial for hooking up RGB headers. I'm not gonna be able to do that for this video because I'm not working with that technology here. But if you guys have a simple fan connector like this, a 4-pin, or sometimes yours will just be a 3-pin, they'll work on a 4-pin, don't worry. But we're gonna take these and find where they need to go on the motherboard. So right here, it says CHA fan 1, chassis fan 1. Doesn't really matter which one you use as long as it says fan. So we're gonna route this wire through there and just slide it in here. There's a little notch there, so that's how you know it goes there. For the second fan, I'm trying to figure out where we're gonna put that one. I think we have to use one of these top slots, which works fine for me because I have a nice little area to pull through. So I have that hooked up. Now all my fans are hooked up. Basically everything's gonna be done. I have a few more hard drives to put in, but you guys already know how to do that. I'm gonna go throw mine in and then I'll catch you guys after that. I don't know. I heard The Verge has a really good tutorial for this, so maybe I should watch that so I can learn and then make my build tutorial. All right, so I just briefly cable managed to the back. Like I said, there are a lot of good tutorials. I'll have a link to a good one down below in the description. But in the meantime, we have all that hooked up. All we have to do is throw this panel on, or actually, so all you have to do is throw this little thing on the side. Basically for this case, we just throw a little screw in right there. This is just one more thing to help keep the GPU stabilized, because those things can be heavy. If you guys have seen the new graphics cards, they're monstrous. So that's just how you stabilize that. All right, so now it is very late and I'm getting tired. So we're just gonna put this on and probably benchmark it tomorrow, see how it's going, install Windows and all that fun stuff. Let's see if I can put this on right. Finish it off with a bang by dropping this and shattering it. All right, so from here, your PC is built and technically ready to go. Now you just need to install an operating system. You guys could use Linux if you guys are that person, or you guys could use Windows if you're normal. You guys could buy a Windows key down below, and just in a minute, we'll show you how all that works. So because this video is so long already, we're gonna put the what to do after you build your PC on another video. So if you guys are trying to figure out how to install Windows or how to just install drivers, that video will be coming out really soon and will be in the playlist, probably in the description down below or in a card here in a second. Anyways, I hope this helped. If you guys have any questions, throw them down below. There are a lot of people that watch these type of videos that have good knowledge of computers, so they could help you. I'm gonna be reading these comments and I should be able to help you as well. So hopefully you're able to get your computer built today. If you guys found this video helpful, please drop a like down below and consider subscribing for more content like this. Anyways, I'll see you guys on the next video.